This is Paulina and Scarlett's presentation about Burroughs Frederick Skinner, and we decide to start with this quote about him and says, "We shouldn't teach great books. We should teach a love of reading. Knowing the contents of a few works of literature is a trivial achievement. Being inclined to go on reading is a great achievement." B.F. Skinner. About his childhood, we had the keywords atheism, Edward, and Fred Keller. About the first one, Skinner became an atheist after a Christian teacher tried to assuage his fear of the hell that his grandmother described. His brother Edward, 2.5 years younger, died at age 16 of a cerebral hemorrhage. While attending Harvard, a fellow student, Fred Keller, convinced Skinner that he could make an experimental science from the study of behavior. This led Skinner to invent a prototype for the Skinner box and to join Keller in the creation of other tools for small experiments. About his education, Skinner received a PhD from Harvard in 1931, and there is a researcher from some years. In 1936, he went to the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis to teach. In 1945, he moved to Indiana University, where he was chair of the psychology department from 1946 to 1947, before returning to Harvard as a tenured professor in 1948. He remained at Harvard for the rest of his life in 1973. Skinner was one of the signers of the Humanist Manifesto, the second. And the three, Skinner has a lot of influence from the most important three people: Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, Bertrand Russell, and John B. Watson. Skinner was attracted to psychology through the work of the Russian psychologist Ivan Petrovich Pavlov on conditioned reflexes, articles of behaviorists by Bertrand Russell, and the ideas of John B. Watson, the founder of behaviorism. About Skinner's work, we have three. The first one is programmed learning. This is an educational technique characterized by self-paced and self-administered instruction presented in logical sequence and with much repetition of concepts. The second is linear programming. These responses to the knowledge toward the goal go unreinforced. Each bit of learning is presented in a frame, and a student who has made a correct response proceeds to the next frame. And the third one is branching or instruct. Branching or instruct, this is a technique that provides the student a piece of information and presents a situation requiring a multiple choice or recognition response. And on the basis of that choice, instruct the students to proceed to another frame where he or she learns in a choice was correct, and if not, why not. About these three works that he had, he writes some books. One of them are Beyond Freedom and Dignity. These argue that concepts of freedom and dignity might lead to self-destruction and advance the cause of a technology of behavior comparable to that of the physical and biological sciences. The second is Walden 2. This is a novel on life in a utopian community modeled on his own principles of social engineering. The third one is verbal behavior, and this dean of American behaviorists came to the regard as definitive refutation of behaviorist accounts of language learning.
By the 1920s, other behaviorists were becoming influential. Perhaps the most important of these were Burgos Frederick Skinner, although for obvious reasons he is more commonly known as B.F. Skinner. Skinner believed that we do have such a thing as a mind, but that it is simply more productive to study observable behavior rather than internal mental events. He called this approach operant conditioning, which has been one of his most influential works to this date. Skinner used the term operant to refer to any active behavior that operates upon the environment to generate consequences. Skinner's theory explained how we acquire the range of learned behaviors we exhibit every day. In the operant conditioning, is used to reinforces, which are responses from the environment that increase the probability of a behavior being repeated. Reinforcers can be either positive or negative. And punishers. Response from the environment that decrease the likelihood of a behavior being repeated. Punishment weakens behavior. Skinner showed how positive reinforcement worked by placing a hungry rat in his Skinner box. The box contains a lever on the side, and as the rat moved about the box, it will accidentally knock the lever. Immediately it did so, a food pellet will drop into a container next to the lever. The application of a rewarding stimulus after a particular behavior, so the behavior is repeated, which is the food. The consequence of receiving food, if they press the lever, ensure that they will repeat the action again and again. The negative reinforcement is known because of the removal of an adverse stimulus, which is rewarding to the animal or person. Negative reinforcement strengthens behavior because it stops or removes an unpleasant experience. Skinner showed how it will work by placing a rat in his Skinner box and then subjecting it to an unpleasant electric current. As the rat moves about the box, it will accidentally knock the lever, the electric current will be switched off. The rat quickly learned to go straight to the lever after a few times of being put in the box. The consequence of escaping the electric current ensures that they will repeat the action again and again. Positive and negative punishment to decrease. Punishment weakens behavior. Punishment is defined as the opposite of reinforcement since it is designed to weaken or eliminate a response rather than increasing it. Like reinforcement, punishment can work either by directly applying an unpleasant stimulus, like a shock after a response, or by removing a potential rewarding stimulus. For instance, deducting someone's pocket money to punish undesirable behavior. In a classroom, if you raise your hand to ask a question and your teacher praises your polite behavior, you will be more likely to raise your hand the next time you have a question or comment. Because the behavior was followed by reinforcement or a desirable outcome, the preceding action is strengthened. Skinner has received more than 20 awards for his work during his life, but one of the more recognizable are from 1985 President's Award, New York Academy of Science, 1990 Lifetime Achievement Award, American Psychology Association, 1997 Scholar Hall of Fame Award, Academy of Research and Development, 1958 Distinguished Scientific Contribution Award, American Psychological Association, 1969 Overseas Fellow in Churchill College, Cambridge, and 1972 Creative Leadership in Education Award, New York University. His legacy is the operant learning paradigm, or the operant conditioning. To this day, this type of conditioning has been used in many different areas of teaching, and it has been highly praised because it is still used to this day. That's all from us. We hope that you have understand a little bit more about Skinner's work and life, and we hope that you enjoyed this presentation.